Welcome, residents, to the Dr. DC podcast. My name is producer Richard, and next to me is the Doctor himself.
Hello.
Each week, we talk about the weird and wonderful world of DC while fielding questions from listeners, just like you. Today, we are joined by a writer and host of the So Fast, So Furious podcast, Zack Beseda.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, it's not. I'll admit, it's not super frequently that someone says, "Hey, would really love to be, on the show," just like sort of out of the blue, but also like instantly when we were talking, you dropped Death of Superman and Resurrection Man. So I was like, oh, this guy like wants it. He knows his stuff.
Awesome. I passed the test. Well, I just recently got back into DC, really, and I've just been kind of jonesing to talk about it in general. So, I started following y'all's podcast, and I was like, well, why not?
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you said you just got back into it. Were you into it as a kid? Did you really grow up on comics and stuff?
Yeah, I initially got into it because of the death of Superman. That drew me in. And for 15 years, I read every single Superman comic, and the New 52 just... It became kind of a chore, where it's like, oh gosh, I got to get through these, 4 Superman comics this month.
Right.
And I just had to take a break. And all the stuff with DC going on now, since Marvel has kind of hit a low point or a break or whatever, I feel like here they really have a chance to kind of take back over, or at least, get in there anyway.
Yeah.
And we'll just see with all the new stuff they have going on if anything actually works.
So was it always, I mean, obviously Superman, big and important for you, but for you to bring up someone like Resurrection Man or something like that, did you like, was that a character you found via Superman, or were you reading other stuff too? Are you into other like weird corners of DC?
I would always try to get into a new comic book if something caught my attention. I could really only afford to do Superman because in the late 90s there were 5 monthly Superman comics. Well, 4 and then a quarterly.
Yeah.
I stumbled upon Resurrection Man mostly because I had been really into this TV show called Nowhere Man, which was about a guy who do you remember that show sound familiar at all?
Yeah.
You know Nowhere Man?
Yeah, not super well, but yeah, I know Nowhere Man.
Yeah, this guy he's at a restaurant with his wife. He goes to the restroom and comes back, and she's still there, but her and nobody else knows who he is. It's like he never existed.
Yeah,
weird.
And so I was reading the summary of Resurrection Man, and it was mostly at first about he didn't know who he was. He had amnesia, which I always find intriguing, and he just had these bizarre powers. And so the mystery of his past and how he came to have the powers really drew me in.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we mentioned it off the top. You're the host of a Fast and Furious podcast.
I am.
Would you say that there's like is there any sort of like connection, like a reason that you love Fast and the Furious that you think is maybe similar to like something you like in comics? Because that series, especially after 5, really becomes like superheroes kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because it was in a way sort of a prototype for, like the Avengers movies where it's like, oh, all these people from different movies are in this one thing. So we actually do talk about that on the podcast, how it is very similar to the Marvel movies and stuff like that. But there was nothing really comic book wise, even though I see the connection. It was kind of from 2 different sides.
Yeah.
I think it was my love of cheesy films that got me into the So Fast movies. And I'm always into a franchise. So once a movie hits 4 entries, I have to check it out.
Yeah, sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's
Pull
fair.
me in.
Have you seen all of, just speaking of 4, did you see like all of the entries in that Christopher Reeve Superman one, including the famously bad 4th one?
Yes, the Quest for Peace.
Yep.
I did. I'm a completionist, and back then we had Blockbuster, so you could actually find all these terrible films. I just sat down and watched all 4 of them. To be honest, I never really loved any of the Superman movies. I mean, I do love Chris Reeves and everything, but I guess maybe it's kind of the 70s-ness of it and all that never really sucked me in.
Yeah, sure. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I weirdly, I have a weird obsession with some pretty bad movies, and Quest for Peace is definitely in there. There's just something I love about Superman's like masonry vision, where he looks at the Great Wall of China and the bricks.
I've seen it once, and it was like in high school. I remember I remember the bad guy being kind of goofy looking, but that's about it.
Yeah, the nuclear man. Yeah.
Yeah.
He grows his fingernails at one point and scratches Superman, which is pretty funny.
That's so weird. That's really funny.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, so you're back into DC now. Are you just reading Superman, or are you reading anything else?
They seem to be starting a lot of series right now. Like they just started a new Suicide Squad. Yeah. I ordered that. I order my comics. I don't go to comic book stores. I mean, I do go to comic book stores, but I mostly order. So, Suicide Squad. And then there was another one that just started, but I can't think. Oh, Legion of Superheroes.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I'm doing the Superman Action Comics, Justice League. And there's other stuff I'm interested in, but, it adds up.
Yeah, I understand that, definitely. I'm paying well over the cover price because we're, A, in Canada, and those cover prices are American dollars, and B, we live in the very far north, and I'm paying on the shipping.
Yeah, fuck.
I always would see those prices on the comic book covers, and it's like, why is Canada paying an extra $1? That sucks. I felt for you guys for a long time.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I understand that. There's a limit on what I can buy each month before my wife starts like putting the screws. Like, we have a family.
Well, and I also signed up for the DC Universe, so I've been digging into a lot of back catalog stuff.
You lucky
too.
Son of a bitch. We can't get it.
No, we can't.
Oh, really? It's not available in Canada?
No, our only way to get the shows and stuff is to either wait for them on Netflix or get HBO Max, because all that stuff's going to be there.
Or download them legally.
Yes, yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, it's one of those situations.
Absolutely. So you mentioned Resurrection Man, and that's one that definitely... like the normies don't bring up very often. So I'm curious to know what your attraction to that character and sort of how you came about sort of enjoying them and what made you want to choose them as a thing to talk about.
Well, it's a character that I started reading him on a whim, but there's actually two runs of Resurrection Man, one in 97 and it came back in 2011, and they're very different. Yeah. But that first run was really good, and it really drew me in. And I think because I was really only doing Superman, like I really wanted to find something new, and I have to start. Well, I don't have, but I prefer to start with issue 1.
Yeah.
And so it was an opportunity to try something new, and quality wise, it just, was worth continuing.
Yeah.
And like the sci-fi elements, and just the fact that, every time he dies, he has a new power. I mean, it's like, that's not a story you really get to hear a lot about in comics. So that was unique. And I don't know. It just kind of, it was just good.
Yeah, it's true. It's not a character that comes up. I mean, we've mentioned him maybe a couple of times on the show, but he hasn't come up especially often. But it was funny.
Which is a shame.
Because we, between Death of Superman and this, I was like, well, an ideal theme for this episode would be Resurrections. And right away, first question we got was about Resurrection Man. So, like, clearly it's been bubbling under the surface.
Yes.
People have wanted this. So this is like finally they're getting like what they've waited patiently for.
I think like second to us just stopping the podcast, I think the next one is that they want us to talk about Resurrection.
Yeah,
Man.
That's right. Either do Resurrection Man or don't put in another episode.
Yeah, please stop. Or go back and do another Ragman episode.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, awesome. Well, we got a ton of questions.
We got so many. Should we get into it?
Yeah, I think we should for sure.
All right, let's do it.
All right. Well, first we're going over to Facebook.
Go to the face and the book. Go to the Facebook.
Oh yeah, doing drops in front of the guests. First question comes from Adam Upper.
Upper, I hardly know her.
Adam asks, is Resurrection Man's New 52 origin the same as earlier versions? Also, what do you think would happen if he went into a Lazarus pit?
Well, let's jump right in. You talked about those two series and how they're very different. So let's talk about Resurrection Man and his origin, where he gets his powers from.
Was that second run New 52?
It was, yeah.
When did Was it really? Wow. Well, in the first run, so he doesn't have his memory. He's been a bum for like a year, and he suddenly discovers that when he dies, and not only does he come back, but he has these powers.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's kind of suddenly like, well, I want to figure out who I am and why I'm able to do this. And so the mystery gets solved relatively quickly. He finds, he was like a lawyer in the past, and his wife and his business partner, who were having an affair, blew up his office to collect the insurance money. But it turned out, of course, that he didn't die. But while he was because it turns out that he had always had this power. He had always been immortal. But while he was homeless, he was captured by this science group and experimented on. And he was injected with tektites and, technobabble, and is then able to have these superpowers after he dies.
Yeah.
So it was well done and interesting. In the second volume, he was like this military guy who, the problem with the second series too is that it wasn't explained very well. It was really confusing. He was a military guy, and they had constructed this this suit that you could wear that was meant to protect you, and he got blown up in it, and that somehow gave him the powers. Vandal Savage was involved.
Yeah, so both versions involved that sort of shady organization called the Lab.
The Lab, correct, yes.
So, yeah, the Lab in the first one that kidnaps and forcefully injects tektites into Mitch Shelley.
Yes.
And then in the New 52 one, he ran the Lab, and when he gets his arm blown off, they inject the tektites into him, but they don't fully know what they do yet, and then they try to sew his arm back on, and then his body starts rejecting it because it's growing a new arm. So they take the arm off, and but there's already tektites in that. So then there end up being two Mitch Shelleys. There's the one that runs the Lab, and there's the one that you follow that is the Resurrection Man, who was grown out of the arm that could not be reattached.
Oh, weird.
So there's actually two Mitch Shelleys in the new 52.
Because I reread the New 52 one recently, and I didn't pick up at all that there was a second Mitch Shelley.
If you miss the 0 issue, you don't get any of that. There's 12 issues of the series, and then the 0 issue. All of the explanations in the 0 issue.
That seems like that would make a lot of sense.
Every single piece of it. But I think that original Mitch Shelley, the guy who ran the Lab, he's a bad guy. He ends up getting like his soul sacrificed to the afterlife, because all through that series, there's angels and demons fighting over Mitch Shelley's soul, and he's like, he's Mitch Shelley. And then so the original one basically goes to hell or heaven. One of them take him, and then
I think the second version goes to hell. The first version is in when DC did that 1 millionth issue thing.
Yeah,
he's in Superman 1 million.
Yes,
Garden,
that's right.
Fortress of Solitude or something.
That's right. He's made it all the way to like the 853rd century.
3rd century.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. But yeah, I mean, they're both called Mitch Shelley. They both have tektites. I'd say the big difference with the New 52 is that he didn't inherently have the immortality, the resurrection power. That in the original one, he could just come back to life. It was the getting superpowers thing that the tektites gave him. But in the New 52, it was all of it.
Right, because in the first version, he was actually created with Vandal Savage. The meteorite or whatever that created Vandal also created him. And so it's implied that they have had this, millennia-long conflict, which I think is actually in both versions.
Yeah, I mean, he was basically meant to be a revamped version of the Immortal Man. The Immortal Man was always Vandal Savage's, like, opposite. But then they decided that it was too boring to just be immortal, so they were like, we got to give him like new superpowers, and they sort of retooled him as the Resurrection Man. Technically, all three now exist. There's Vandal Savage, there is the Resurrection Man, Mitch Shelley, but there is also the Immortal Man.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's confusing.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like we've cleared that up a bit.
So the second half of the question.
Oh, that's right.
What do you think would happen if he used a Lazarus pit?
Well, but you'd have to be dead to be resurrected in a Lazarus pit.
Can he die? Like, that's, yeah.
He can, and he's dead. Like, the length of death varies. It could be a couple minutes. It could be a couple of hours. So if he got him into the Lazarus pit within that period of time, I don't know anything specific that would happen, but I bet you could come up with a cool comic book story.
I was thinking that
he wouldn't be able to get
that maybe he would de-age or something, but then I was thinking about like the new 52 sort of version, and I was like, but if the Tektites always remake him how he was, would the Tektites age him back to normal again?
It depends on how he was killed.
Yeah.
Because I think that would still come into play.
Yeah.
Because one of the more interesting elements of the first series is when he becomes a woman.
Yeah.
Because he's being tortured, and scientifically, I guess, biologically, women have a higher pain tolerance than men, and so like that was the way he was dealing with it. So anyway, if he was in the Lazarus pit, I mean, I do like that idea of him de-aging. But yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Wouldn't he just like, or he would just not get powers because it's like reversing death essentially?
Or if we take science and the Lazarus pit seldom mix very well. And I think the best example of that is before Flashpoint in the New 52, Nora Freeze was put in a Lazarus pit, and all of the cryochemicals interacted poorly with the chemicals in the pit, and she became this being called Lazara that could like bring back the dead, and she went crazy. Mm-hmm. So it's possible that putting more science like the Tektites into the pit would also do something horrifying and awful.
Maybe he'd be able to bestow superpowers on other people or something.
That would be interesting. Yeah. Or bring other people back with powers.
Whoa.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
I like that. See, there we go. We just wrote a comic.
DC execs.
All right, next question comes from We Only Just Dan Dunn.
Beautiful.
Dan Dunn asks, can you explain how Green Arrow died and came back?
I mean, this would have been right living in the era where you were reading Superman, basically. Do you remember the death of Oliver Queen? Was that a thing that you encountered?
I do not. And one of the more frustrating things about only reading Superman is when they would be like, to finish this adventure, go to Green Arrow number 25.
Of course.
And I just wouldn't have that issue.
I don't even like it when the TV shows do it.
But Superman is present for the death of Oliver Queen. Basically,
really?
Oliver Queen gets in too deep sexually and figuratively with an eco-terrorist. And he ends up on this plane with his arm in this thing that's a double dead man switch. So two of them have to turn it on, and then the other person took their arm out. And if he took his arm out, this eco bomb would go off, and he's on this plane that's headed for Metropolis, and he can't stop it, blah, 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 blah. Superman shows up on the plane and is like, okay, let's figure this out. And he's like, I could fly you out of here. And Oliver says something like, you fly too fast, it would rip me apart. That's a bad idea. And then he goes, well, I could cover you with my cape. And he goes, that would just keep me in the blast zone. Like, that doesn't help. They're going through all these things. And Superman says, I can get you out of here without taking your hand off the bomb, meaning he would amputate Oliver Queen's arm. And Oliver says, screw that, and just lets go of the bomb and lets it and explodes and dies. And that's...
Well, it seems like his two objections would have been fine alternatives. I mean, no one else seems to have problems flying with Superman. And isn't his cape made out of super strong material?
Well...
that can withstand explosions?
I think it's one of those things where like Superman wouldn't be able to wrap him up or like I don't know, but it was they basically make the conceit where Superman's only helpful suggestion is to cut off his arm, and obviously that's no good for Ollie. And he kills himself, and it leads to this funeral where Superman's like, I don't actually have like very many nice things to say about Oliver Queen, but like I'm sad he's gone, which is it's sort of an interesting. You know, Superman doesn't have too many of those relationships where he can't even stomach something like really nice to say or whatever. His resurrection sort of happened in two parts. His body came back. Like
the very next day.
Hal Jordan as Parallax, I think, brought his body back. But then his soul hadn't come back. His soul was like safe in heaven or whatever. And then during the Quiver arc written by Kevin Smith, Hal Jordan as the Spectre takes like goes to heaven to get Ollie's soul back to put it in his body so someone else can't take over his body, basically.
This all sounds actually a little familiar now that you're talking about it.
It's one of those. It's very comic booky, very sort of silly, but yeah, I mean, his resurrection in both parts is tied to Hal Jordan, who they are famous friends from that Hard Traveling Heroes series that they had.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. Oliver Queen died, correcting a mistake he himself made. And then was very slowly and begrudgingly brought back to life. He really his soul didn't want to leave heaven, but they were like, you kind of have to, or someone else is going to take over your body.
It'd be like if I killed you.
What?
You begrudgingly have to come back to life.
Oh, yeah. Super begrudgingly.
All right, let's go on and leave Facebook and head on over to Twitter.
Twitter.
Hell yeah. First question comes from our favorite, spacey, sexy texter. That's Cosmic DM.
That's right. What does he ask?
Cosmic DM asks, there's been a few characters who have died and it stayed permanent, like the original Dove. Can you think of any situation where you would want to see them resurrected or brought back in some way?
Yeah. Zach, you're familiar with like Hawk and Dove, like the original Dove?
I am.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know more the female Dove than the male Dove.
Yeah, so the female one, Dawn Granger, comes around after the first one. Dawn Hall, Hank's brother, dies during Crisis on Infinite Earths. Mm-hmm. Dawn is one of very few characters that has never come back to life.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was killed by Monarch or Wave Rider fighting Monarch.
Well, that's the second one. That's the female one. But his brother, Dawn Hall, has never come back. He dies in Crisis, and that's it. You only ever see him as a flashback or when they reboot, but he never is resurrected.
Correct. He does, like you said, makes appearances. Like he leaves Hank messages on his answering machine and stuff, which is super creepy.
Yeah.
And I don't think they ever resolve that.
Well,
like
the closest you get to like a resolution about the state of Dove, like the original Dove, Dawn Hall, is in Blackest Night, where all of the sort of zombie, Black Lanterns are rising. The Black Lantern rings are actually incapable of reanimating Dawn Hall's body. They keep trying to bring him back, and it keeps saying Dawn Hall at peace, Dawn Hall at peace, and they can't do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now,
I did read Blackest Night, but at the time I didn't have the backstory.
So, I mean, that's just an example, but there's lots of characters that have died and stayed dead for like a long time or relatively permanent in comics lore. Can you think of like a situation where you'd want like a really permanent death to be undone, like one that hasn't already been undone?
I'd actually have to see a list of like who would include.
Yeah. Yeah,
anyone off the top of your head that has been dead? I can't.
I mean, other than sort of Elseworld versions or parallel Earth versions, easy ones are like the Waynes have to die and basically stay dead, right?
Or like Jason Todd, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, Jason Todd has come.
Has he?
But yeah, Dove, the Waynes. After a certain point in time, Pa Kent, that's a big one. Mm-hmm. Before the universe got rebooted, Ted Kord, the Blue Beetle, was dead and stayed dead for a long time. Sue Dibney, the Elongated Man's wife, was killed and stayed dead until they, rebooted everything.
That's what I'm saying. It's so hard to think of like who could even be like a character that people might still remember, but it has not been brought back.
Well, let's reframe the question a little bit. So many characters die and come back. That's like an easy comics thing. Do you think it's nice to have some that don't, just so that there's still the idea that at some point the death might be permanent? Do you think it's important that we have some characters that don't come back?
Yeah, I think it is nice to have, because I mean, it leaves it's always up in the air, like I like thinking that people can come back, but of course it's not ever necessary. If somebody ends up just staying dead, that's fine.
Yeah.
But then, 20 years from now, someone could decide, to bring it back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
that's what's great about comics.
Yeah, exactly, and I think it's good for the characters too, because I mean, so many of them have come back before. It'd be easy for them to just be like, "I'll just throw myself on this bomb. I'll probably come back." But if there's some characters that never come back, it might keep the fear in them a little bit. That you should actually sort of fight to stay alive because you might not get another resurrection.
Totally, and like having characters die is another exciting part of comics because it does happen, rarely.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think it's nice to, keep the readers guessing, if somebody's dead forever, or they might still come back. Or
Yeah, I mean, especially in the case of Don Hall, the original Dove, I would never want him back. I prefer Hank and Don Granger, like the version that we've got, and also that thing with Blackest Night was just so nice. The idea that like he was the avatar of peace, he is at peace, it's done, he's beyond our reach now. I kind of like that. It would feel, now that that's been established, it would feel like really horrible if he came back, because it's like, no, he had it. He did, like, he finally got the reward, right? Like,
yeah, it is nice too, because they kind of remind you of that a couple of times, and it kind of reinforces, like you said, the idea that like, yeah, he should stay dead.
Yeah. I think it's nice for him. Not that Don was like a massive character or something, but like, he's earned some rest. It'd be kind of nice.
I haven't read their new series. I do need to get on that one. Their most recent one, anyway.
Yeah, like the New 52 one.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Their 90s one.
Yeah, well, it goes back into familiar territory from the 90s one, where there are other bird kind of avatars like them. The 90s one was all about Kestrel. The New 52 one featured Condor and Swan and Osprey and some other ones. Like, they all have different bird names.
Crow.
Yeah. You go down the list, like chickadee.
Quail.
I would read a quail book.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Wasn't that Doug Funny's?
Oh yeah. Isn't that his last name?
Quail name.
Is he Doug Quail?
No, it's Doug Funny, but he was like a superhero character was like Quail Man.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
you're right.
Yeah.
And he wears underwear.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Look at that.
Deep pull. Well done.
That's what I'm here for. If I'm going to pull anything, it's going to be deep. All right. Why does it this episode we have all the dumbest drops?
No, you know what? We've established it. We do these drops. And this one is yours to do.
I know. This one's just always the one that takes the most amount of work for me. All right. Raging G, he used a short sword and shield. Raging G, his favorite actress is Sally Field.
I loved watching you get progressively more embarrassed as you did.
Yeah, no,
that's my favorite part about it.
Normally these stupid ones we don't do in front of people.
Yeah.
All right. Raging G asks, what death you wanted to become permanent? That's a weird question. What death you wanted to become permanent? Also, I wonder how you felt about the whole death of Superman thing. If you were so invested in the continuity of DC at the time.
Well, these are kind of two halves of the same question. You said you got into comics sort of with Death of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about it? And I won't say my leading question. I want to hear how you felt about it.
Well, two things. I mean, I was super intrigued. I mean, like, just knowing that there was such a huge mythology and all the different characters, and you can't grow up not knowing who Superman and Clark Kent and Lois Lane are. So I had all the basics. But I do also like I had mentioned earlier, being a little confused because they would reference things that I had no idea what they were talking about. I had no idea who or what Eradicator was. Once Superman actually came back, because Eradicator was involved, I didn't really understand how it happened or how it worked. I just kind of was like, oh, I guess that's what happened.
Yeah.
Or maybe I missed an issue somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, after a few months, especially after Superman came back with his mullet, I was kind of caught up and I understood what was going on, and so it was then easier to understand, larger plot points. But also too, after that, there came this time where I think they had a really hard time finding stories for Superman.
Yeah.
Because I still enjoyed reading them, but not a lot stuck,
Right.
Like, it seemed like the wackier shit did, like Superman Red and Blue and that stuff.
Yeah.
But when I try to think about other characters during that time, Batman, of course, was involved a lot, but nobody was really. I wasn't able to get as involved with other DC characters at the time.
I mean, I will admit I was not actively reading. Oh.
I don't know what happened there. We got disconnected.
That was weird.
Yeah.
You were saying?
Should be fine.
Okay.
Continue.
I wasn't actively reading comics when Death of Superman was coming out. But looking back at it, I think it's really easy in hindsight to take a look at Death of Superman and Reign of the Superman and be like, oh, I get what the story was doing. What do we do in a world without Superman? Who would pop up as it's okay, Superman is back? Like, it actually kind of works as a story. But as someone reading it in real time, did you feel kind of like betrayed that he wasn't like dead even for a year? It was like 8 months and he was back.
Was it that long? I actually didn't know what the time space was.
Roughly, I think, yeah.
I guess because, again, I was in 6th, 7th grade at the time. So even though I didn't read a bunch of comics, I had an idea of them and stuff. And so, and especially knowing how popular the character, or at least how well known he was, I just assumed he was coming back.
Right.
I really loved the Reign of Superman story. I really thought one of the 4 would end up being Superman for some reason, which didn't end up happening.
Who did you think it was going to be?
I thought it was going to be Eradicator because I didn't know who he was. And I think Steel, Superboy, and, well, Cyborg had been around for a while, but Superboy and Steel had both kind of been introduced with at least that version of Superboy with that storyline. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, they're clearly not Superman. Cyborg is, well, he's a cyborg, so he can't be Superman. Yeah. It's got to be this Eradicator guy. And I actually had written this all out. I was going to write this to Action Comics or something. And I had my mom proofread it. And she's like, your only evidence for it being Eradicator is that he's only choice left. It's not a good argument.
I love that your mom corrected you on that.
So I ended up not sending it.
That's very funny, actually.
That's amazing.
I love that. So the first part of this question again, then. Obviously, Superman's death was not permanent. There have been lots of deaths. Name a character, they've probably died. Is there a death in comics that you have experienced that you wish had been permanent? Or let's just say as permanent as they are in comics. Let's say permanent until the next crisis.
When and he didn't die, but when Bruce Wayne got his back broken by Bane, I kind of thought that would have lasted longer.
Yeah.
Because... And it's a little cheat because he didn't die, but I remember that being a big deal, and I just thought that it would have, Azrael popped up, and then it didn't last too much longer after that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know that I've actually tracked how long that lasted, if it was longer or shorter than the death of Superman, but it was probably pretty similar.
Nightfall.
Yeah, it's probably relatively similar. Yeah, that's a fair one. Richard, do you have one? Is there a character that has died that you wish would just sort of stay that way so we all could all move on?
There's a certain Robin I wish would have stayed dead.
Wait, which one?
One that maybe Joker killed.
Oh, okay, yeah. The Jason Todd?
Yeah.
You don't like Red Hood? You don't like that he's back?
No, not really. I think Red Hood's fine, but I think that it's just kind of like a more extreme version of of Dick, and I just... Yeah, it doesn't feel like an original enough of a character to me. I think they've done some interesting things with them, but I didn't. I could do without.
Yeah.
So Jason Todd is back as Red Hood.
Yeah. So he comes back in an arc called Under the Red Hood, and
which is interesting because Joker was introduced as a character called Red Hood,
and he does it deliberately to like needle the Joker basically.
Okay.
And when he comes back in that arc, he starts taking over like Gotham crime. So he's quote unquote cleaning it up because he sort of stops them from doing things that are like affecting like kids and stuff like that. Yeah. But he's just taking over the crime. He's not stopping it. And he will put people down and stuff like that. He has since reformed. He's a member of the Bat family again. But yeah, for a bit there, he became like another sort of adversary for Batman.
It was just like a more extreme Nighthawk. I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Interesting.
God, who do I want to stay dead? Or who would I have wanted to stay dead? I
thought of one after.
Oh, sure. Yeah, go.
I know he's huge, but I wouldn't mind if Lex Luthor just finally stayed dead.
Wow.
I mean,
I'm into that.
They keep bringing him back, and I feel like they've run out of ways. And
They've really taken every angle of that character.
Well, yeah, I mean, the current Justice League arc has him, he quote unquote killed himself, and he's been morphed into this apex predator that's part human, part Martian, and he's been imbued with all of these like 7 energies of doom. He's more super than he's almost ever been. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know where he goes after this.
I know he's given everybody presents or something.
Yeah, he's been bolstering all of the villainy in DC, and he's been going Earth to Earth and killing other versions of him. So I think he's one. If not the only, he's one of the only Lex Luthors left. But yeah, I agree. I don't know where he goes from there. Oh God, this is such a tough question. There's a part of me that just wants to say that what is maybe the obvious easy one, which is Bruce. You know, Bruce quote unquote died during Final Crisis, and it might have been nice if he actually died in Final Crisis instead of just being shot back in time. Because then Dick was Batman for a bit, and that was a cool series with Dick as Batman and Damian as Robin. That was really neat. Everyone was moving on. I that might have been the right way to send him off.
Yeah, and just going back to the people staying dead thing, it does add this kind of progression of time to comic books, which inherently kind of don't have a built-in end date.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it is nice when people die sometimes.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on.
All right.
Next question comes from Jake Murphy.
Oh, Chicho.
Who asks, "What's your favorite resurrection?" For Jake, it's Green Lantern Rebirth.
All right. So, opposite question. What is the one where you were like, thank goodness they're not dead. This is dope resurrection. This makes sense. I like it.
Did you read War of the Gods?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I liked how they brought Wonder Woman back.
Yeah.
Because it was they had all of every religion's gods fighting. It started off in a much more interesting way, like that the Roman gods were fighting the Greek gods.
Yeah.
I thought that was really like there's Hermes versus Mercury and Jupiter versus Zeus and that stuff. Anyway, Wonder Woman ends up getting killed, and they have to bring her back, to kill the bad guy. And so they have all of the like Shazam is there, and all of the mystical characters have to stand around her and kind of imbue her again with these powers, and even Black Adam has to be there. And I remember thinking that was a cool one.
Yeah, that's a pretty neat one, especially that moment. Like you said, how many people had to come together to make it happen.
Yeah, and it had to be on the beach where she was originally born and all this stuff. So
yeah.
I think it was George Perez's last run with Wonder Woman.
That would make sense.
That was his last Wonder Woman story?
That would make sense, yeah. Yeah. Richard, do you have one? Do you have a favorite?
I do. I was trying to think of who it would be, and I think it's probably Barry Allen.
Right,
Flashpoint,
so, nice.
Like Flash Rebirth, where he comes back from the Speed Force.
Yeah. I think that's a really rad one. I like what they do, and sort of when he's gone, and sort of the reaction to him returning, and
yeah. Well, yeah, and I mean, and he had been gone for like 20 years, like in real time. That was a long absence, and that's a cool one because not only does he come back, but he comes back to an altered history of himself because Reverse Flash goes back and kills his mom,
which I love. That I think that's it's really cool.
Yeah.
That's a great example of somebody being gone for a long time. And then like when he comes back, it's like, holy shit, this character hasn't been around forever.
That's how you get real impact. But the problem is they're too afraid to take anybody that's a really good character and take him away for too long.
Well, see, this is the thing, right? Hal was gone for a long time, and we got Kyle Rayner, and he got to develop as a Green Lantern. Barry was
I know
gone
how much
for a
you
long
love
time.
Kyle Rayner.
Oh, I do. It's Guy Gardner.
Oh, yeah.
Kyle's fine. Kyle's cool. Barry was gone for a long time. We got Wally West as Flash. He got to develop,
Exactly.
But that's the piece that I think we were missing from Batman is Dick was barely Batman.
Yeah.
When Bruce was gone. Or, Superman didn't get replaced. There were 4 people that wanted to replace him, and he came back in time to take the job back. Like, never mind, I'm not moving. Like, So, yeah, I mean, there's certainly some instances where it was kind of feels like a little bit like they jumped the gun. They could have waited a little bit. My favorite resurrection? There's something kind of, I mean, it's completely arbitrary, but there's something kind of nice about the end of Blackest Night when, the 12 characters are resurrected by the White Lantern, by the white entity. And it includes like Martian Manhunter, who hadn't been gone for too long, but they were like, John, you're back. And he's like, yeah, I'm back. And there's just like some really nice moments in there of some different people. You know, Hawk came back, Firestorm, Ronnie Raymond, he came back, but then it wasn't all good people. Reverse Flash came back. Captain Boomerang came back. Yeah, there's something kind of neat about that one, even though it was totally arbitrary. It wasn't like we were building to it the whole time, but yeah, I think that one is maybe a favorite one. It's kind of neat for me.
Awesome.
It's a good one. I did read Blackest Night. It's a great story.
It's one of my favorites. I mean, Richard, I made him read it, and it's pretty dense, but he can't get over the fact that I read it several times, like a year, because I just like it so much.
You really need some backstory to jump into that.
You do. It's tough to just jump in with something like that.
For sure.
I missed a lot of things when I was reading it, but I thought the main story was interesting enough. It kept me engaged.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. All right. Everybody's favorite new action figure for Christmas. It's Talking Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't see it?
No, I did see it.
Oh,
I refuse to acknowledge that. Don't you tell me how to do a drop.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Anyways, Talking Superman asks, we've got a very divisive relationship with our fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love them and they're about us.
I just pick fights with them constantly. All right. Talking Superman asks, do you think it's fair to say Pa Kent is as responsible for bringing Clark back to life as any Kryptonian technology?
I'd say that's fair. I mean, I think that was the implication.
So what happened? Because I don't think I remember this part.
Well, you probably remember better than I do, but Pa Kent had a heart attack, and so he died and went to heaven, and finds Clark up there, and is kind of like, "Hey, guy, you should go back and keep saving people." Is that about it?
Yeah, that's sort of roughly it. But this is all at the same time as there's this Kryptonian regeneration matrix thing that's happening.
They are going on at the same time.
That involves the Eradicator, and that he's kind of like Clark isn't fully dead. Again, very sort of convoluted sci-fi sort of stuff is happening, but yes, I mean, essentially, yeah, there's a little bit of a shove toward the light, kind of, or away from the light, I guess, sort of thing, from Pa Kent. I mean, that Pa Kent with the heart attack thing, though, is also like, that's such a, anytime it has happened and he's had a heart attack, that's such a, if you could say this, good way for him to die.
Yeah.
Because Superman can't do anything about it. He can't save him. He can't punch the heart attack away. There's no power that he has that stops heart attacks. Like there's no vision he has that could do anything about it. It's just, there are some things beyond Superman's control, right? And that's it's always kind of a nice thing. And in a more like metaphysical sense, I think that's always what keeps him as like Superman, is something like that, where you like, all of his powers can only do so much, and knowing that kind of keeps him as Superman. But yes, the thing you're talking about is more literal, and it's basically Pa Kent going like, come on, son, like, that's really sad.
Hit you right in the dads.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
No, now you get it. It was made for you.
I get it now.
Yeah. All right. Guess what? It must be Saturday at the Mortuarium. Next question comes from Morgan Knight.
I do love how people choose their screen names.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Organ Knight asks, how would the DC landscape look post-crisis, pre-Flashpoint, if all the major deaths like Superman / Jason Todd, John Jones, Oliver Queen, etc., were never reversed? Is the universe screwed by certain events, or just fine?
Wow.
Never reversed?
Like they never are resurrected. If
Superman
all of them died
dead,
and stayed dead.
Jason Todd stayed dead. Oliver Queen stayed dead.
Gotcha.
Wow.
Are we fucked?
Oh, Jesus. It's
a great question.
Yeah. So, I mean,
the real one is Superman and John Jones.
Well, yeah, I mean, they happen in sort of different orders, right? You know, like, yeah, I mean, Superman's the first big one to fall. Oliver Queen and Hal aren't long after that. Let's say Bruce never recovers from his back injury. You know, Barry is gone in Crisis. Yep. So we know some of them get
Supergirl.
Sorry?
Supergirl died in Crisis.
Yeah, so we know some of them get replacements. You know, Kyle Rayner, Wally West. There's a new Dove. We get Dawn Granger.
Yep.
Some of them don't. You know, in the case of Batman, if he doesn't come back to fight Jean-Paul Valley, who has become sort of like murder Batman, they sort of set that story up to indicate that maybe the remaining members of the Bat family couldn't handle it either. So you maybe get a Gotham that has deteriorated.
Those bigger characters would definitely have a bigger impact. I mean, without a Batman,
yeah,
can you even have a Gotham? Does Gotham survive without Batman?
Yeah. I mean, God, yeah. I mean, Oliver Queen dies. Connor Hawke takes over as Green Arrow, but he would have to be there more permanently than he was. Ted Cord, he died and he didn't come back anyway. Yeah, I think by the time you get through to like where we were pre-Flashpoint, then most characters are dead.
Yeah. You're pretty fucked, I think.
Now, that's not to say other people wouldn't have taken their place or become more prominent or something.
You can't really become Superman.
But if they never got reversed, there's a thing too in Blackest Night, which is weird, which is that Necron says, all of you that came back to life came back because I let you. So Necron, who guards that sort of limbo death dimension, says, I let you back so that you could be my agents. And then he turns them into Black Lanterns. So does it fuck Necron's plan if they don't come back to life? Does Blackest Night actually go better for the people of Earth if no one had come back to life?
That's before? A really good point.
Like, that's the bit in Necron's plan that never really made sense. It's like, well, you could just reanimate bodies anyway. Why did you need to bring them back and send them back to be your agents? Like,
you get more issues out of it.
I think this would be a thing I'd be interested in seeing someone do this would be a good, you know, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, something different where no one ever came back. Yeah. I mean, what's the short answer to this? Is the universe screwed by certain events or just fine? I mean, I think we're fucked, right? Like,
most likely.
Yeah.
I just think whenever Superman's completely out of the picture, we're kind of fucked.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just talking about the fact that he has powers and can protect us, let alone, like, what does it do to a society when you have all of these, like, symbols of hope and they're systematically, like, taken down?
Yeah, not only just Superman, who's sort of the pinnacle, but then like all of the supporting casts, like,
yeah, well, like, what does that do philosophically or like spiritually to your world?
I mean, that's kind of what they were trying to do in Justice League, the movie.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, that's true. They were kind of going that way.
I couldn't tell what they were trying to do.
Yeah, we're still trying to piece it together, but.
Yeah, well, whatever they were trying to do, 2 hours was not enough time.
Yes.
I just feel like there might be a cut available that could explain.
No, we're not feeding into it.
All right, let's go to the next question.
All right.
From our favorite religious representative, it's Chris Chan.
Ooh.
Chris asks, in Blackest Night, Batman was both back in time and his corpse resurrected as a Black Lantern. How does that work? If his corpse is in the present, how can his physical body also be in the past?
Have you read Final Crisis?
Yes.
Oh,
but not since it came out.
Lucky you.
I read Final Crisis, Infinite Crisis, anything with Crisis in it.
See, that's my kind of person. You dive headlong,
despite what everybody says.
Yeah, you go right in to like the big like continuity events, and then you make sense of it later.
I do.
Yeah,
I think exactly.
That's my approach too. See, I like this. This is good. So Batman dies, quote unquote, in Final Crisis. He faced,
but his body was always in the past.
Yeah, so essentially, yeah, he faces down Darkseid. He shoots Darkseid with a gun, which is a pretty cool ending to Final Crisis. And Darkseid hits him with the Omega beams, and it basically sends his consciousness back in time. And there's a whole series where Bruce is sort of fighting his way from caveman times back to the present.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about
and
that.
It's really, truly insane, like Morrison kind of stuff, you know?
Morrison? Insane?
Could you imagine?
Wow.
Imagine a world.
First time.
But while that's happening, in the present, they believe him to be dead because Superman carries this charred Batman corpse out, says, we lost him. And in Blackest Night, they use the resurrection of or the reanimation of Batman's corpse as the emotional trigger that basically like releases Necron into the world, and like it's like a big turning point in Blackest Night. Do you remember what the big reveal was about this though? Because I only kind of like understood it.
I don't.
So the reason that there's a corpse to bring back is apparently it's a clone that Darkseid made. So the charred corpse from that keep in mind, Darkseid is killed. The charred corpse that Superman carries out of the room where Darkseid is dead is a clone of Batman, where the real Batman is back in time.
Where'd the clone come? Who cloned it?
Darkseid, for reasons I don't remember.
Oh, I see. Okay. For nefarious reasons.
It is, for some sort of evil plan, I'm assuming. But yeah, so technically, the thing that gets reanimated in Blackest Night isn't even Bruce.
Wow.
It's not the real Bruce. So that's how it can be happening simultaneously.
But didn't he have all of his Bruce's memories?
Yes. Yes, it has. Well, kind of, but it would kind of have Bruce's memories if you believe in things like genetic memory and stuff like that. That you could, if you clone someone, then it would be like biologically, physically available to them. Okay. But also, I'm pretty sure that resurrected Batman doesn't actually say all that much.
Really? Oh.
The other Black Lanterns talk a bit more than that one does.
I mean, I guess, yeah, that's true.
So I think there's that to it too. But yeah, I mean, the short answer is like crazy fucking storytelling is what happened. But yeah, clone corpse?
Yeah, Resurrection, clone, that's always a good comic place to go. Everyone gets a clone.
There have been so
Lex
many
Luthor
clones.
gets a clone.
Supergirl.
Yeah.
There was that like the Matrix Supergirl. There's like Lex Luthor Jr. was a clone. Yep. There was like multiple Lexes there in the 90s for a bit.
Exactly.
There's
Luthor Jr.
Matrix,
did you just say?
Yeah.
I always preferred Mrs. Lex Luthor. I thought those arcade boxes were better.
Oh, I was thinking if the kids could call you Lex Jew.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, clones always come up. There's such like a classic trope, but that's basically how that happened.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
That's stupid.
Do you want to read Blackest Night again? Is that making you want to read it?
Can't I? All right, let's go to the next question. Coming from Senator Paul, that's James Paulson.
James Paulson.
Who asks, what is a resurrection that shook the DC universe? What is one that hasn't happened but would alter things the most?
Barry was pretty big.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was expecting it necessarily.
There had been maybe like 2 or 3 moments of teasing that Barry wasn't dead.
Oh, right. Where Wally would see him when he was running really fast.
There's a very small one in Infinite Crisis where they try to trap Superboy Prime in the Speed Force.
Yeah.
And then again in Final Crisis, he actually comes back in Final Crisis. But there's like maybe 1 or 2 moments where it's like, was that Barry's voice in the Speed Force sort of thing? But essentially, yeah. I mean, he was basically gone for 20 years and then he came back. It was huge. It was a massive shakeup.
Yeah, to answer the rest of the question, again, I feel like I'd have to see a list. Who's an option? Who's still dead?
I mean, who is still dead?
The one that I
Didn't
was
really have to
thinking
think
of was one that has that I think just happened,
Okay.
which is Alfred.
Yes,
Mhm.
Alfred recently killed by Bane.
Because that feels like a one that it's one of those ones where you don't realize that it's like he's connected to everybody and has like been like a father figure and like has been sort of like this glue that's held the Justice League together.
Yeah.
And there's been this deep connection. But it's like the what's his name when in the Avengers when what's his name dies?
Coulson.
When Coulson dies, yeah, it feels like that kind of thing where it would just like it would make everybody so mad. Well, I mean, I don't know what it's currently happening. It's probably not reflected like that, but I feel like that in reality that probably would.
I don't think they're treating it that way. At least not yet. But I think you're right. I mean, they certainly could. I mean, just to have fun with this premise a little bit, who do you think would be the sadder death to the heroes that inhabit the world? Alfred Pennyworth or Jimmy Olsen?
That was the other one I was thinking of. I was like, has Jimmy died? It feels like a thing that would have happened.
He
Not
sure
that
died in Batman v Superman.
Well, yeah.
Got shot in the face.
Yeah.
He sure did. 5 minutes in.
Has he
That's a
died
really
though?
good question.
In like comics?
Not like that. Not in a way.
Well, no, I
that's-
didn't think they'd shoot him in the face.
Well, no. But I don't even mean not like Alfred. Like not in a way where it's like Jimmy is dead. It would be like
Right.
Jimmy's dead. It's like no, it's okay. I was over here.
Or it's like, hey, where's that Jimmy kid? Oh, I think he died. It's fine.
That's a
No,
really
I think
good
Alfred's way
suggestion,
more.
actually.
Sorry.
Jimmy Olsen's death that was a really good one, actually. Jimmy Olsen's death, I think, would be a big one in comics if they killed him.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, like, yeah, you're saying, like, he touches all these other characters. I mean, I think Alfred, he's older, so it's kind of, I'm surprised he's lasted this long, to be honest with you. But yeah, so, I mean, I think Jimmy would be more impactful, actually.
This is going to sound like a very stupid pitch, but I think either you or one of our listeners had pitched the idea before of like some of the support staff of heroes maybe knowing each other or teaming up or something like that. I would be a little bit interested in seeing like the sort of memorial that like the various butlers, tech assistants, people in chairs, would have for someone like Alfred, like there's a part of me that's kind of curious about like, did they have like an annual conference while the heroes are meeting in the Hall of Justice 3 conference rooms over? It's like, and that's the sort of tea that I'll prepare late at night, and that's my presentation on keeping a healthy schedule.
This works as a great way to stitch him up after a late night fighting.
Yeah.
I use a saline compound that quite puts it well together.
It sounds stupid, but there's a part of me that's actually kind of interested in that.
Considering that we almost got like a psychiatrics like building for superheroes, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
It was almost done.
We were so almost got a good version of that.
Yeah.
So Alfred would be running like sidekick workshops.
Yeah.
That would be cool.
This is
support staff 101.
What you do is you take the morphine, you go down to the local orphanage, and it's just it's just a little dab and wipe, and everyone's asleep.
Wow.
This is how you forge the papers.
Thank you for attending my recruitment seminar.
This is how you build your own child coffin.
Jesus Christ. That's fucking grim.
Just a quick trip to the Home Hardware and a couple pieces of wood, and you're good to go.
Okay, so you think that if Alfred gets resurrected from this, not just that things get retconned, but if he's actually brought back from the dead, that would be pretty impactful.
Yeah.
Zach has said Barry. I mean, one that would be impactful for reasons that we stated earlier that I hope it doesn't happen would be Don Hall. Like the one character that just never ever comes back in any form. It would be impactful because it never ever happens, like the first Dove. But I don't want it to happen. And I wouldn't wish for that.
Well, it would depend on how they did it ultimately, but you're right. I mean, like it does seem like such a fitting end for Dawn 1.
Yes.
And then to change it, why mess with it?
Yeah. I mean, even like some of it we're playing around with what the word resurrection means. Like, for example, Jor-El has been a relatively big part of recent Superman comics for the last like 4 or 5 years, but the conceit was that in the moment of Krypton's explosion, he was plucked from the timeline and brought somewhere else. So he never really died. It wasn't a resurrection. It was that he was never dead. And just recently at the end of the Unity saga, the sort of burgeoning new present day version of the United Planets says, you know, for all of your crimes, your punishment is to be reinserted into the timeline where you're meant to be. And they basically send him back to exploding Krypton.
Wow.
Fuck.
So, you know, him being resurrected, I think, would mean something. But I don't want to touch, because we just had this interesting Jor-El stuff recently, but like, he's technically never been resurrected.
It's true. I also think would be a really interesting one is if you brought back the guy that Batman kills in like that first Detective Comics issue. And it's like he has to atone for his crimes.
Back from the Golden Age.
Yeah.
Those
and
few issues where Batman had a gun and like, kicked a guy into the vat of acid.
Yeah, and he's just like, you killed me and he must atone for his crimes. And like the guy who never kills has to suddenly like deal with the fact that he like killed somebody in his early career.
Yeah, sure. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm open to that.
That's awesome. All right, let's move on.
Let's do it.
We're leaving Twitter and heading on over to Instagram.
Now we're going to Instagram, take some questions and answer them.
First question comes from the real Josh Gill.
Gill.
Sexy Gill. Who asks, Ollie, Hal, Barry, who should have stayed dead and who should have died in the first place? Why?
So let's just recap how they died. Ollie, we talked about, refuses to live without an arm, explodes himself. Barry runs himself basically sublimates into the Speed Force, trying to destroy the Anti-Monitor's antimatter cannon. Hal Jordan, after becoming Parallax and going bad and destroying the core, sacrifices himself to reignite the sun during Final Night.
Mm-hmm.
So, of those three, who should have stayed dead and who should never have died in the first place, and why?
Well, if Hal Jordan hadn't come back, we wouldn't have survived 0 Hour. So he should probably, I think, as cool as it is to see Barry back, he could have stayed dead. We have Wally.
Yeah. I mean, Barry's probably the one that's actually fucked things up more by coming back. Because he caused Flashpoint.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's true. That's exactly true. So he should have stayed dead and left everyone else where it was.
Yeah.
I also think
Hal coming back restarted the core and like all this kind of stuff. And
I just think like the way Ollie decided to go out because he couldn't live without an arm, it's a pussy move.
So sorry, are you saying he should have stayed dead because of that, or he shouldn't have died in the first place?
He should have stayed dead.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He took the coward's way out.
Right.
You can't shoot an arrow with one arm.
If he had, I bet there's a way that he could have. He could have gotten one of those ones with the little like the crossbow.
In Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, an old man Oliver Queen only has one arm because Superman ripped his arm off in that world.
Boom.
And he fires an arrow.
So that world, Oliver was the smart one that was willing to live without an arm.
Well, and he fires a kryptonite arrow with one arm and his teeth.
Or he can do the one-armed bow and arrow, which is just throwing a spear.
Yeah.
Like
that's
an
right.
atlatl.
That's how it's always known. The spear is the one-armed man's bow and arrow. Yeah. Okay, so then who shouldn't have died in the first place? If we say like, yeah, fine, it's a given, the three of them died, maybe Barry should have stayed dead because he kind of fucked things up when he came back. Who should never have died in the first place?
I'd vote Oliver just because
he shouldn't have killed himself. It was a pussy move.
Yeah. I like Green Arrow, but I find him to be less interesting than other characters.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Hal kind of had to die because that was part of reigniting the sun, and the sun's pretty important. Barry kind of had to die because he destroyed the antimatter cannon, and positive matter and the universe is pretty important. Oliver had to die because explosions.
Yeah, exactly. Not a really good reason.
God, you've really convinced me. You've really soured me on Ollie's death. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say he took the coward's way out, but it's definitely he shouldn't have died.
That's only because it's the way you're going.
Oh yeah, it's strapped to a bomb on an airplane. Yeah. I know. I've got a flight in like less than a month. I can't say that on a podcast.
It's being recorded.
Oh God. Yeah, I agree. Ollie, yeah, I think I'm with you guys.
Sounds good. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Next question comes from Astro Zombie 3000.
That's a good name.
Yeah, yes. What do I even do with that? Astro Zombie 3000.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Who asks, I have a twofer.
Okay.
Oh, well, pull it out.
Jesus.
In canon continuity, not an Elseworld story, has Batman ever died and been resurrected? I know the answer is a mere Google search away, but I would like to hear the doctor's take and know he can easily summarize. Secondly, what do you personally feel was the most effective death and resurrection story in DC history that you had the most emotionally engaged? And why?
Sure. You said you've been reading some of the New 52 and stuff like that. Did you read like near the end or partway through, I guess halfway through to the end of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Batman run?
Was that with the Night of the Owls?
Yeah, that's that whole the Owls were sort of at the start of that. Did you read Endgame, that arc with the Joker?
I didn't. I don't think so.
So in that arc, Joker there's a previous Joker arc called Death of the Family, where Joker thinks that the reason that they're not as good rivals anymore is because they have all these extra characters. He's going to kill everyone else so it could just be him and Batman again. But then
makes sense.
He's foiled, of course. So then when Endgame rolls around, he says, do you know what? I tried kind of to make you understand it. I don't care. I'm going to finish you now. Like this is it. It's over. And at the end of that arc, they're fighting in this cave that's collapsing and like rocks are falling down. It's this really like bloody knife fight that they're having with each other. And they basically both are crushed to death and bleed out. And Batman says like, I'm just going to lay here with my friend a while.
Yeah.
But they're down in this cave with this substance whose name I'm forgetting at the moment, but it basically like repairs them, heals them, brings them back with like it affects Bruce's memory and stuff like that. So I think maybe for a split second he was dead and then came back, but it wasn't like he had been gone a month.
It was like seconds.
It was like he was fine. He was back, but you just didn't know who he was or stuff like that. That's as close, I think, to a real death as you get with Batman because of the aforementioned Darkseid clone. Because he wasn't actually dead.
Yeah.
He was just back in time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But maybe more interestingly, what is the most like effective or emotionally sort of resonant death/resurrection story that you've encountered?
Well, the Superman for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, was it actual? Would you say like the story itself did that, or was it just the idea of like it's Superman, like he can't die, and then?
Yeah, it was more that. I mean, like looking back, I think the writing I always liked Dan Jurgens.
Yeah.
Especially like Reign of Superman. I think I found the death of Superman a little more confusing, and then once we got to the Reign of Superman, I was more invested.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, is that a story that you've revisited? Would you say you've got you appreciate it more or less? Like reading it again, or was it one of those things where it's just you can't recreate those sort of first moments of it happening?
It feels different, but I do think I enjoy it more now just because I was able to have more of a backstory. And like I had no idea who Hank Henshaw was or where he came from. And,
sure.
You're able to go along with it just because, especially in comics, they're constantly reminding you what just happened. But Yeah, I think it was kind of just the first time I read it, just like the crazy, spectacle and sci-fi elements of it. And then going back later on and actually, also just being several years older and being able to understand certain concepts more.
Definitely.
But yeah, I definitely found it a little more easier to follow rereading it later.
Yeah. Yeah. Richard, is there a death or a resurrection that really got you where you live?
I
know it's not Oliver, so let's just skip that one.
Yeah. I was thinking about it, and I think it was what's her name? What's his name's wife?
Sue Dibney.
Sue Dibney.
Yeah. That death is so heartbreaking because it's kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
Like Jean Loring kills her by accident.
Yeah.
For no reason, basically. And then torches her body, and then and then what that does to Ralph.
It's scaring me because they keep bringing up the name in the Flash.
Well,
show.
yeah, Sue Dearborn.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh god, what are they gonna do?
Well, they're not gonna do it to her yet. He hasn't even met her. They need to fall in love first for them to break your heart with it.
I know, but the way TV works, it could happen over a season.
That's true. I feel
like they're rocketing towards it right now.
You're right. Zach, you were nodding your head. You've read Identity Crisis?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, as long as she doesn't meet Dr. Light, she's fine.
Yeah. That story really paints some silly characters in a different light.
Rough.
Yeah.
That was rough. Yeah.
I mean, in current continuity, both Ralph and Sue are alive and together, but they were not actually resurrected. That's just because reality changed.
Exactly.
Sue never comes back. Ralph ends up dying, sort of pursuing the case and pursuing stuff, and they stay dead. And in Blackest Night, when a bunch of people are brought back to life at the end, someone comments but where's Ralph? Where's Sue? And they're like all these people came back to life, and they're like, no, fuck you guys. Where the hell's Ralph and Sue? So that's fair. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think mine is Martian Manhunter's death. In the beginning of Final Crisis, he's captured by the secret society of supervillains, and Libra uses a flaming sword to kill him, basically, as a favor to this minor villain called the Human Flame. And does that as sort of a show of his strength and to sort of unify the villains under his banner. And it's pretty sad. The last name that Martian Manhunter says is his wife's name. It's really, it's pretty heartbreaking, actually.
Seriously.
And that's right after he had been undercover with them on that prison planet. And then they discovered that he was there. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Because he's sort of the heart and soul of the Justice League.
For sure.
Yeah.
Or Captain Atom getting torn apart.
Oh, yeah, I mean, anytime Captain Atom is ripped asunder and sent into the quantum field, that's kind of, I mean, you just feel bad for him. I don't know that I feel sad, but I just Jesus, the poor guy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's leave Grams and head on over to the Reddit.
Where everyone's nice and no one's ever mean.
Yep, everyone's super, super nice on Reddit.
Y'all know a different Reddit than me?
Yeah, I've got the safe Reddit on.
Yeah,
okay.
They should make that a thing. There'd be nothing on it.
Yeah, I know. It'd just be wow, no one's commented on this?
Yeah. There's 4 posts, no comments.
All right. This is the last question.
All right.
And it's from Never Say Die, Iron Joker 33.
All right.
Who asks, what is one resurrection that from a storytelling point made little sense and actually hurt the storyline it happened in?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll throw one out there. It's technically not a resurrection, but Bruce Wayne.
Oh, really? Yeah.
The fact that he didn't actually die.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that he came back so soon from not death. That one hurt it. Because again, like I said, unlike with Barry and Wally or with Hal and Kyle or those sort of things, you didn't get enough time. I mean, listen, Dick's had lots of time in the comics. He got to grow into Nightwing. He's grown a lot as a character anyway, but I would have liked more of him as Batman. In the same way that we didn't get enough time of Connor Hawke as Green Arrow before Ollie was back, or a version of Ollie. So Mine's Bruce, definitely. I think that hurts the storytelling because it really it undercuts that moment in Final Crisis where he dies, but he also dies saving the day by shooting someone with a gun, the one thing he said he would never do. You should die, right? Because this is it. I can't take it back. I die, and then that's it. The loop is closed.
Yeah.
And it kind of cheapens that to me.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see Dick be Batman for 5-8 years. I mean, you could have done him. There's so many stories they could have done with him.
Oh,
and then you bring back Bruce
absolutely.
Later on.
Yeah, definitely. Either of you guys, is there one that you kind of think is why did they do that?
I just don't think, I can't think of anybody.
Ted Kord?
I didn't even know Ted Kord was dead.
Just his death, though,
Yeah.
was not famously not resurrected.
Yeah. I think that it was just shot in the fucking head by Max Lord. I don't know. I think that it was a kind of a bullshit death for such a great character. And
when was that? Was that right before Infinite Crisis?
It was in Countdown to Infinite Crisis, that one shot where he's the no one will help him.
Yeah,
because they see him as a joke because of that whole. They play off that whole Keith Giffen era of the Justice League where they were basically comedy comics.
Yeah.
And no one will help him because he's seen as a joke, but he uncovers the entire plan basically, and Max kills him. Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It sucks for him to have gone out like that.
Yeah.
But storytelling wise, it was pretty good, now you have all these heroes, these quote unquote A-tier heroes with this blood on their hands because they didn't take him seriously.
Yeah.
It really and it kicks off the whole thing. But no, that's fair. I mean, it's if you liked Blue Beetle, that's a shitty way to see him go.
And I actually do like Blue Beetle.
Yeah.
But I'd forgotten about that.
Dead Man?
Right. Yeah, because Boston Brand is resurrected for Brightest Day. At the end of Blackest Night, Boston Brand comes back from the dead. And that in a weird turn, he's no, I'm better dead. I do not want to be alive. Yeah. Brightest Day is not the best story. So, I mean, maybe from that perspective, it's this was maybe a kind of a wasted opportunity a little bit. This wasn't as impactful as bringing Dead Man to life could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a fair one. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other ones that just seemed really kind of cheap or
Pa Kent and Martha killing them
just in general.
Yeah, I don't think it had enough value to it, and I like them as sort of this emotional support connection for Superman, and it's not like he's gone crazy since they've died.
It just depends how they go out. I think, like I said, if Pa Kent has that heart attack, I actually think that's pretty crucial for Superman.
It is.
It's a thing. It's a thing he has to come to terms with, that he can't save everything or stop everything.
Yeah.
Which I think is maybe the moment that stops him from going. Not that he was on the brink of going too far, but you know what I mean? Having that in the back of his mind is even if I took over the world, I couldn't do it all. So what's the point?
For sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and one other one I was going to mention is when Mon-El dies fighting Time Trapper.
Yeah.
And I liked how they brought him back. Did you read that?
Yeah.
When he turns into Glorith or whatever, but he had hidden a piece of himself in Mon-El. And then when the timeline changed, he was able to come back with... Anyway, I found that one interesting too.
Yeah, the Legion is funny because there's been multiple instances where the continuity changes and then it ripples and affects the Legion later. And they're actually able to either survive or manipulate or exist in spite of that transition.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, Mon-El. Yeah. The Daxamite.
Yeah.
He's bad with pencils.
They don't put lead in pencils, remember?
That's right.
Cool. Using my own words against me.
It's graphite.
That's right. Well, that's it for the questions.
Yeah.
Which means, did you warn him about this?
I didn't. No, I was a very, very bad host.
Well, if you haven't listened to this podcast, then God hope you don't. This part of the podcast is where we call back to an old comic book series called I don't know if you've ever heard Dial H for Hero.
No.
So this is our segment. We call it Dial Doc, but it's based on Dial H for Hero, which is basically there's this magical rotary dial. When you dial hero, you become a never before seen hero or villain with never before seen powers and sort of a crazy name with sort of a pun. It used to be a book where they would get like readers to submit silly suggestions for characters that would never sustain a book, but it was like, well, we could do this for a couple of pages. So someone would be like, I think you should be like tank arms, and then they would be like, okay, tank arms, and just be a guy with tanks for arms.
Wow, way to burn a character.
Well, oh god, yeah, I know. So every week we try to come up with a never before heard of character with a name and powers. We've been doing this for like over a year, and it's becoming very difficult.
And if you're wondering, how dumb could we get? We did also create a character named Cum Man.
That was a bad one.
Yeah. So there is no bottom and there is no ceiling.
Yeah. Richard.
Yes.
Since we've just
we're not putting him on the spot yet.
Just dropped this on Zach.
Yeah.
Do you have one that can start us off?
I do have one.
Yeah.
I do have one. My character this week, his name is Mindfowl.
Mindfowl?
No,
Mindfowl.
Mindfowl.
Okay.
Mindfowl has the ability to sense when any danger is coming, but cannot do anything about that danger, can only know that it is coming and mentally prepare themselves for what is coming.
Oh. Okay, sorry. Say it one more time.
So they have the ability to sense danger that is coming, but cannot do anything to stop that danger.
Okay.
Much like a canary in a coal mine.
So, right. So they have a danger sense, but it doesn't come early enough that they could do anything about it.
Yeah.
So that they're literally only good in conjunction with someone else.
Yeah.
Right. It's called Mindfowl?
Mindfowl.
Oh, Mindfowl. Damn it. The other shoe just dropped.
There we go.
Damn it. Oh, Jesus.
Oh, that came to me a few minutes ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got one.
Okay.
It's called Hula Back Girl. So Hula Back Girl.
I apologize. We're bringing our A game today. This is unfair.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. This idea is BANANAS. So Hula Back Girl basically like has sort of like spiky, like almost like Stegosaurus like spines out of her spine, and all of them have spinning hula hoops on them that she can like take and throw and use.
But like, aren't hula hoops just like plastic? Like, isn't it just like?
Well, but these are like made of bone. These are like part of her. So they're kind of sharp and stuff. They're sort of like weapons and defensive.
I was picturing it just
she could
like
use them to make like a spinning sort of shield, or she could use them as attack things. But they all like live on her spine.
Because I was just picturing it being like plastic and just being like, stop!
Oh no,
like,
no,
get out of here!
No, it's not quite that bad of an idea. It's just this much better than it. Yeah.
Hula back. Girl.
Yeah, Hula Back Girl.
Wow, that's...
Well, you ain't no Hula Back Girl.
no, that's bananas.
So, Zach, we've given examples of how creative we can be. Have we bought you enough time?
I think so.
Okay.
I have a character called Brain Fart.
Okay.
And every time he passes gas, he has normal intelligence. But he gets exponentially smarter until he farts again.
So he has to hold his fart if he wants to retain his intelligence?
Exactly. And his arch enemies can like give him Taco Bell and stuff.
That's...
Like, oh no!
Oh,
you gave me the laxatives.
I mean, that's one of the best ones we've ever had.
I think so. We could
That's
stop
a
doing
great
them now.
idea.
Yeah,
so he gets smarter and smarter until he farts again.
Yes.
That's so funny. Brain fart.
That's amazing.
So, Mindfowl,
yeah.
Hula Back Girl, Brain fart.
Good God.
Wow.
Let's start writing.
Incredible. Very well done.
That was unbelievable. Well, as we're sort of coming in for a landing here, obviously people now want to meet the man behind the brain fart. So how can people talk to you online? Where can they see what you got going on? Do you have anything to promote?
Well, the podcast, obviously, you can check that out on iTunes, wherever you get podcasts. It's So Fast, So Furious. I'm on Instagram at Zack_with a K. On Twitter, it's Zack for real, REEL. I've got different. It's hard to. All my names have some kind of weird thing with them. But yeah, that's about it. Feel free to look me up there and check out the podcast, of course. And that's about it.
Awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to send us a question or give us your own dial doc for the week, all you have to do is reach us through our various social media platforms, such as our Facebook,
Dr. DC Podcast,
our Twitter,
at Dr. DC,
our Instagram,
Dr. DC Podcast,
our email,
drdcpodcast@gmail.com,
and of course our subreddit,
r/Dr_DC.
And of course, you can phone us at
208-917-3238.
It's 208-917-DCEU. And of course, go to our website,
drdcpodcast.com or .ca.
and we want those reviews all the time.
Yeah, 5-star reviews. Keep them coming. We're chugging. We're on our way to 100, and we have not promised what we would do when we get to 100. So
No, we
that's
have
still
not.
up in the air.
Yes.
And of course, we've got our Patreon, patreon.com/DrDC. It's $5 a month. An extra episode comes out every week on Fridays. And for the regular episode, if you're sending stuff or you're sending questions, next week is our last regular episode before Docmas.
So, Zach, if assuming you're unaware, every year we record 12 episodes in a single day and then release them as the 12 days leading up to Christmas.
Wow.
We also drink an entire glass of alcohol for every episode that we record in that day.
It's pretty bad.
Well, now that sounds pretty fun.
It sounds like that until the first year we did eggnog with rum.
That was fine.
Yeah, I died, but last year was really
Last
bad.
year was tough. We just did wine. That was a bad idea.
I thought it would be. I was like, wine? How could wine? I could drink like a bottle of wine easy. We drank I think we drank like each 2 bottles, 2.5.
I had 3.
Yeah, it was bad.
But next week is not the start of Docmas. Next week is the last regular episode before then.
Yeah.
And because, things are coming to a head and stuff like that, I thought the perfect theme for next week is crisis.
Oh,
Any crisis, any continuity shattering event, all crises are on the table for next week.
crisis of consciousness.
Well, Crisis of Conscience is an arc from JLA.
There we go. Look
Yeah.
at that.
That's tied into identity crisis. Yeah.
Oh yeah, look at they hit all the crises.
Yeah. Yeah, we're running out of regular turns of phrase that use the word crisis for them to use for an event.
Definitely.
Zach,
Thank you
again for coming on.
Absolutely.
It was a ton of fun.
Thanks for having me, guys. This was great.
Yeah, no, this was a ton of fun. Seriously, anytime someone opens a conversation with both Death of Superman and Resurrection Man, I'm like,
You're on.
all right. You had me.
I haven't been able to talk about Resurrection Man in 15 years, so I appreciate it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Unless you're a listener to this podcast, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Stop writing me about Resurrection Man, all of you.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks again, Zach. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk to everybody next week.
Adios.
Ciao, ciao. Say goodbye, Zach.
See you guys.
All the superheroes, they always fight for what is right. Live with danger and adventure, they are men of might.
This was a Brain Freeze podcast.